Hello and welcome to Straight Onto Disney, a Disney deep dive and analysis podcast, where each week I, your host Jonathan, takes a deep dive into the history of each Disney film and the legacy that they left behind. I'd like to remind you that you can follow me on Instagram at Straight Onto Disney Pod, and you can email me your thoughts at straightontodisneypod@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to this week's Straight Onto Disney, where I'm going to be chatting all about Toy Story 5. Yes, it's finally time for me to dive into my spoiler thoughts on Toy Story 5. And obviously, you've had the spoiler free review that came out after I went and saw the film in June, where it was more spoilery free. But this week's podcast, we're going to be diving into all of Toy Story 5 from its writing, the characters, everything. But before we start, there's a teeny bit of mousekeeping to attend to. As always, D23 is around the corner, but the big thing this week is that Spider-Man Brand New Day is officially out in cinemas. I've seen the film. I still need to do some reels and stuff for Spider-Man Brand New Day, but I'm trying to do it like I don't want to spoil it for a lot of people because it's been a really good scene that a lot of people haven't been spoiled by it. So my spoiler-free reaction will be out soon. I did go and see it opening night. What a film it is, and if you've not seen it yet, go and see it. Especially if you're a Marvel fan and you don't want to be spoiled by the big twist and the big reasons and ramifications for this film, I definitely would go and try and see it. And I kind of also want to emphasis on trying to see it before D23 if it's possible for you to be able to go see it. I'm just going to leave that little crumb there. If you know what I'm talking about, obviously probably have an idea of what's going to get announced at D23 this year for the Marvel panel. Obviously, I also need to go over everything from Comic-Con. I did plan on doing a smaller video about that, so maybe during the week, but obviously, to be fair, we'll dive into the thoughts about that coming up soon in a future video. But obviously, Marvel announced Ghost Rider in 2028 with Ryan Gosling, which is crazy to think we're getting Ghost Rider after Secret Wars. We also announced the confirmation of Black Panther 3 with Letitia Wright returning as Shuri, David Johnson taking over the role of T'Challa Jr., the young kid at the end of Black Panther 2, and Winston Duke returning as M'Baku, which is kind of interesting with Secret Wars. Also, we kind of know that they're going to survive whatever's going on in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, which is kind of a bit of a shame, I guess. But hey, I get why. So we can kind of assume that Denai Guerrera will be returning as Okoye. Lupita Nyong'o, fresh off the Odyssey, will probably be returning as Takia. Trying to think, maybe Martin Freeman might be back as Everett Ross. Who knows what the stories they're going to go down and the routes they can go down, because there's so much comic lore that they haven't touched yet from the Black Panther Pantheon, which will be really interesting to see what they do with it. Obviously, Avengers Doomsday was a big push there. They released another trailer that has not released online, although the trades were saying it was going to be attached to Spider-Man Brand New Day. That did not happen because I would have been going more crazier this past week if that had happened with what I've heard from what is in the trailer shown at Comic-Con. And obviously we also got they talked about Avengers Endgame Encore even. They talked about Avengers Endgame Encore, which I'm still not sure how it's going to tie into things. I have a theory of why, but we'll talk about that in a future podcast. Today's all about Toy Story 5, finally being able to discuss it. I also want to just say that The Devil Wears Prada 2 is now officially on Disney+, so go ahead and watch that as well. Good your loins, guys. Also, an interesting thing that I wasn't going to touch upon till a future podcast, but there's not been tons of mousekeeping. But interestingly, the Incredibles 3 are not going to age up the parts, which I find very interesting. That we're still going to be within the 1960s of Mittersburg, which I find quite interesting. That's what they seem to be doing with their characters. When maybe it would have been interesting to see a much older variant versions of the characters, but hey, we'll see what the story is, and that's gonna come to fruition in 2028, which is going to be really cool to see and be interesting. Obviously, D23 predictions are coming next week. I have a spreadsheet with everything that I think is likely, so it's going to be a really interesting, fun time on the podcast, and obviously keep an eye out on the Disney Debate channel as well, because they'll be covering all that. Ugh. Have a look over on the Debate channel as well, because they'll be covering all of that in the next few weeks, and you may see some appearances across both sides as we get through the next few weeks, with it being D23. It is the big one. It's not the small one from last year. This is the big one with the panels. So it's going to be really cool. And fingers crossed we get a Vision Quest trailer. I'm going to prep you some predictions for D23 that aren't like outlandish. They'll come in next week's podcast. But I'm going to say it now. Vision Quest trailer, Hext official trailer. Hext is going to be pushed hard next weekend. Not yeah, next weekend. Yeah, it was like, is it next weekend now? Yeah, it is, because it's August. I'm gonna say yeah, so next weekend, which is crazy. It's August already, everyone. Sorry, I'm just rambling a little bit, just going through things. As always, I hope everyone's been enjoying the little smaller podcast episodes that I've been dropping out. We've had Behind the Mouse with Ben Sharpstein, diving into who he was as a director, producer, animator across the Disney pantheon, across the Disney company in the early days of the franchise. Well, in the early days of the conglomerate. We've also had, obviously on here, we've also had my Funko Pop collection. I'd really love it if you went ahead and give that a watch. That would be really cool. And that's it for mousekeeping. I'm just rambling for no apparent reason today. I hope you enjoy this kind of like more chaotic-y kind of thing. Sometimes it's not as polished as I kind of want it to be, especially these kind of episodes. Whereas with the films, it's more cohesive and more straight to the point. And I promise we will be getting back to the film soon. I do promise we are going to get through a lot of these films. It's just we're in a bit of a big thing of announcements over the next few weeks, and obviously we start with Comic-Con, and like it's kind of crazy time at the moment with what's getting announced, what's not getting announced, and it's going to be probably a very busy weekend next weekend. So get your snacks ready, because I think we're going to get big announcements. Not so much on the scale of we're announcing new things. I think we're going to get more information and looks at things they've announced in AK, Villains Land, Monstropolis. I think we're going to get a better insight of what Villains Land is going to entail, with what rides we're going to have, what characters, in terms of how that scale is going to look. I'm not too sure on the other parks. I doubt we're going to get a lot of Lion King. I know I'm rambling, but this is all for next week's, because I have a spreadsheet of everything in likelihood and what we could be getting over the next few years from the Disney company, especially from what I think is likely, unlikely, and would not be surprised if we get a little Frozen 3 tease at at D23 this year. But that's a little tease of what you can expect from next week's prediction episode, and we're going to be chatting to a few people over the next few weeks about their D23 predictions. So it's going to be a very interesting time on the podcast over the next few weeks. I think this is like the biggest D23 I can think of in years, especially if what I think's happening and what I think's getting announced would be crazy, but obviously it could be wrong. And that's the fun of it all. So we've done that. So let's move over to Toy Story 5. So that is mousekeeping this week. I thought it was going to be a little bit short and sweet. It's not. I just rambled for a lot of that. So let's talk Toy Story 5. Toy Story 5. So I kind of think the best place to start with this week's podcast is diving into my first feelings of when Toy Story 5 was first announced. So Toy Story 5 was first announced in February 2023 at an earnings call by Bob Iger for the Disney company, and I kind of think I remember being sat there going, really? I think my genuine response was like, do we really need this? Why? I kind of think it was like, obviously, other than money, because they know that Toy Story films are going to sell and get people in cinemas. So I think we were also riding on the fact that this film was also going to be a bit of a savior to the company, especially due to how the pandemic had done. So I think that's probably a big factor in why Toy Story 5 was first officially greenlit. I think another big thing is a lot of the Pixar films that had been released from onwards hadn't really been as big hits as Pixar would have wanted them. And that's not their fault, because a lot of the Pixar films got shafted with the Disney Plus release. We're going to release Pixar films straight to Disney Plus without the premiere access that the live action Mulan, the live action Cruella, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, they all got that release. Whereas the Pixar films, and these would be Soul, Luca, Turning Red, they didn't get released in cinemas. They just got sent straight to Disney Plus with no money that you'd have to pay. That would have gave the creators of these films income. And the first film that Pixar released in cinemas after the pandemic was Lightyear, which I don't really want to talk about. Like, my feelings with Lightyear are very interesting, and when we get to Pixar films and I have to talk about it, then I will talk about it. But I don't think Lightyear was ever needed to be made. I understand it was kind of cool. Let's do a Buzz Lightyear origin story, but no, there was no need. Like, we could have just done Toy Story 5 instead. And we're gonna get to my feelings and thoughts about something later on in this episode, but I kind of feel like we could have done that. So I think Toy Story 5's green light was kind of a response to pandemic, and we need money, and we know that this film will sell and is going to get audiences that love these franchises and Disney fans into cinemas, as well as young kids. And it was a mix of, we have no money, we don't have the money that we probably should have had from COVID. So I genuinely do think that's a very big impact into why we're kind of going through a sequel period at the moment with Toy Story 5. With Toy Story 5, the next one after Gato is The Incredibles 3. Yeah, The Incredibles. We've got Incredibles. We've kind of gone through the sequel with Inside Out 2. We've gone through Inside Out 2. Coco 2's been announced. We've gone getting Incredibles 3. Monsters Inc.'s getting a sequel. And I say sequel because Monsters University was a prequel. So technically, Monsters Inc., the next Monsters Inc. film will be Monsters Inc. 2. Well, and then we've got Gato coming out next year, which is their original film. And I feel like I'm missing something, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And then if you look at the Disney side, this is not all thing. We're kind of going through the same thing with Moana 2. Moana 2, in the last few years, so Hex will be the first original film since 2023 from the Disney company, as we've gone through Moana 2, Zootopia 2, Moana 2, Zootopia 2, Frozen 3, Frozen 4 are on the way. I feel like I'm missing one that's been recent, that's a sequel. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I feel like something's happening with some things. So I think it's interesting to see, as a company side, why we kind of have seen the sequels come in. And I do remember thinking, I don't need this, but I'm sure it'll be a good film because it's Pixar. Did I ever think it was going to be as good as it became? 100% no. I kind of thought we were going to go down the Toy Story 4 route again. And I think it's interesting to think about is because I obviously understand that a lot of people, including myself, do think Toy Story 3 ended that trilogy beautifully. And you can understand why a lot of fans don't go much for, because they think it ended with 3. This is a perfect ending, and nobody can take away from how beautiful that film is, how constructed and so well done that film is to each and every character. Whereas with 4, it kind of felt like we're sidelining all these really good and interesting characters just for Woody and Buffy. And I understand why they did that, because the story that they wanted to tell was a very different story. So I kind of was like, I'm not sure about 5. I don't know what 5 could do. And then I found out that Andrew Stanton was going to write and direct this film. And I was like, this film's in safe hands. From the minute I heard that his name was the director and writer for this film, I thought, we're in for a tearjerker. He's definitely doing this story because there's a story he wants to tell with these characters, rather than, we're going to make money, which is obviously another big factor. But with this film, I'm sorry, I keep going back to this, but when I first heard it, it was like, okay, so we're not just doing a cash grab here. Because Andrew Stanton, as I've researched and followed his work since I was a young child, and all the Pixar films that he has worked upon, he has won so many incredible awards. And from reading and watching interviews with him, he's not the kind of person who just does a film. He has to find the story and root this in something very character driven, very narrative driven, rather than just, we want to do XYZ with these characters, which I find really interesting and so fascinating to understand how they work and use that as a kind of jump point for stuff that I do outside of the Disney podcast, and use that kind of influence within my own work, which I find really interesting, cool. And I kind of just want to raft at the fact that Andrew Stanton has been involved with Pixar since it was founded. Andrew Stanton has worked on every Toy Story film. He has, at least up till Cars, he'd worked on every single Pixar film. If you go look on Andrew Stanton's IMDb, he has at least a role in production, cast, somewhere within the writing team on nearly every Pixar film currently. Is now like the supervising head. I'm not sure off the top of my head what his actual role is currently now within the Pixar company. But to list it off, he created Finding Nemo, voiced Crush, he's the voice of Crush, he's the voice of Zurg. He was part of the writing team for Toy Story 3, developing that story. So when you hear that, and obviously I cannot not mention the Oscar-winning WALL-E was his creation, and hearing that came from him playing with an original iPhone, it's just so incredibly interesting. Go ahead and find that story. I'm sure it's on a reel somewhere where Andrew Stanton's talking about how WALL-E came to be. What a film that film is in sound design. So I don't need to say anymore. And since I started this podcast and since we've been chatting about Toy Story 5, I've been championing this film because, one, it was Andrew Stanton. And then we got the details that Jessie was going to be a main player in this film. And this film was going to be revolved around Jessie. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. What are they going to do? What are they going to do where Jessie is the main focus? And it kind of made sense because Jessie was given the sheriff badge at the end of Toy Story 4. And it kind of made sense that she was now going to lead these characters. And I think my first inkling was, are we going to see Emily? What is this going to be, kind of like a flashback film? Because that could have been interesting. That Toy Story 5 was more of a Jessie focused history film, but no, it's actually really set within modern day. And I think so at that side, it's like, so Jessie's going to be the main character. We're going to have Woody and Buzz within it. We'll have all the main characters within them that we've seen throughout the films that were in 3 and 4. So I was like, it's going to be interesting to see what actually is the story. And then I can't remember if it was like a few months later, or maybe it was, to be fair, it was probably the D23 of that year, or something in that vein, that we got the first concept art and were introduced to Lilypad. And this kind of toys versus tech reality was what was getting discussed to be the main theme of the film. And then it clicked to me, this was the perfect story for Jessie to be the center of. If you're going to talk about and dive into a story about where toys are getting replaced by new technology, Jessie is rooted within that abandonment story. From the first time you meet her in Toy Story 2, you get this real sense of this character has such a unique backstory. And then when you get to, especially when you hear, I can't get back in the box, I can't get back in the box, you kind of get this underlying context of what actually happened to this character. And then you get When She Loved Me, which is just tear breaking and fascinating to watch as you understand more about her history. So when you hear about this kind of idea about being abandoned and pushed aside for new things, Jessie's the character you first think, oh my god, are we going to dive back into this? So that's kind of my thoughts on where we were at before we got trailers and stuff, where you really saw this emotional depth in Jessie and this kind of against toys versus tech. Randy Newman coming back to do the score was just perfection, and having a lot of the original voice cast all back was really wonderful. The potato heads were recast, which I don't know if they needed to do that, but it was nice that they did, and they got a few lines here and there. But they could easily have done they could have easily done the Buttercup and Green Aliens route of them being there, but they don't speak. So it's really interesting to see that that's what the route they went down, and it's such a fun film. It's just a beautiful film, and it made me cry again. And we're gonna get to that in a minute of why it made me cry again. Of this just wonderful story that I think is Pixar. I think this film is Pixar at its best. It's wonderful humor with plenty of adult jokes that are really well written into the script. They don't feel like they're being forced into this script. They actually feel like they are a part of the story, but a part of the script in terms of the way that they're done, and it's just wonderfully executed in terms of storytelling. The script is so well polished and well constructed, and I think that is a testament to the story team, to the editors, and getting this film to what it would become, the final film, and everybody who worked on this film, the animators, and we'll chat about that in a few years when we get to Toy Story 5 on the podcast, because I'll deep dive it properly in there as well as here. Because this is more of a we're gonna just chat about my thoughts about the film, whereas later on down the line it'll be production history XX. But I thought we could just dive into a little bit of my thoughts about when it first was announced as well. So I think another big thing of this film was, what was the villain going to be like? What are we doing? So I think the best place to start is, let's dive into the film. So one of the big things is that Bonnie is starting to try and make friends, and boy oh boy did I feel seen in this film. When you're incredibly shy and you're still playing with your toys as a kid, you kind of get this kind of stigma. You get this ideology that you're still a kid and you're not growing up, even though everyone else around you is so addicted to phones. They're going out to parties and they're going to do XYZ, whereas you're kind of still at home. And I, I kind of really got this film in its message with Bonnie, and the heartbreaking scenes that Bonnie goes through really showcases Pixar's best storytelling. So we're going to chat about the Bonnie stuff first, because that's where I've started with. So Bonnie gets lily pad, and lily pad gets all the friends in for the digital side. And when Bonnie gets invited to the sleepover, which is so wonderful to see her so excited that she might have the possibility of friends and how they want to be there. She takes Jessie and Bullseye with her, and they're like, do you still play with toys? And she's like, no, and throws them in the car and gets the lily pad instead and takes her in. And then one of the heartbreaking parts of this film is that when they're playing hide and seek, they intentionally don't go and find Bonnie. They leave her in the cupboard, and Bonnie's distressed. And boy, oh boy, is it so heartbreaking when you see the messages that the girls are saying about her and talking about how XYZ. Because I'm just trying to remember things off the top of my head. Because it's been a while since I've seen the film. But it's so heartbreaking when she's realizing how horrible people can be. And I'm going to be truthfully honest, those girls are the real villains of the film. And it's really heartbreaking to see a bit of reality coming into this film that I think Pixar films have kind of lost a little bit. Is this kind of gut punch of, oh, this could actually really be happening. This actually really is happening. And this idea of tech being here, we don't actually villainize the technology here. It's just another way of being able to connect and trying to find ways to do so. However, Lily's Pad's best intentions aren't the best. And she understands that and becomes so much more complex than us needing to have a outright villain. And it's the themes of loss, abandonment, and the horrific scene of when her mom gets hold of the tablet, which I wish she'd got hold of a lot sooner, and realizes the messages and sees what's going on. And I really love how they use the technology within this film to bring together each of the characters. So obviously Jessie is a very big part of this film, and I cannot believe that I'm sat there in the cinema, and I did not know this was going to happen. But as soon as you see the Toy Story 5 logo on screen, and it fades away, it pans to the instrumental of "When Somebody Loved Me" and Emily and Jessie on the swing. And oh my god, what a way to gut punch everyone in the first 5 minutes of a film. You're playing that music, and we haven't even started yet. Oh my god, it was really like, oh my god, we're here already. And I didn't think it was going to be that quick, and we get a lot more context to Emily and Jessie's relationship, which I love, especially later on, because instead of being thrown in the car, Jessie and Bullseye end up on the side of the plate, and it's revealed that Jessie has Emily's address still on her Hoser, I think it is. I can't remember off the top of my head. And they end up going back there and being played by a girl named Blaze. And we get to meet more technology-based toys like Snappy Pants and Snappy Pants. We meet Snappy, Smarty Pants, and Atlas. Which at first I thought were going to be apps on the lily pad, which I'm kind of really cool that they're not. And we get to see this idea of tech isn't all bad. We can aid and help. We're all toys, at the end of the day, and we're just more advanced toys, and we are gonna be able to be there for them when they need them. So it's really cool getting to see Blaze like find these toys again and play, and Jessie showcasing what play is like to these toys that don't really know what they don't really know what play is in being told with stories, and we get these wonderful fantasy sequences that are done in such a beautiful animation style. And I have to say the animation in this film is stellar. And what we find when Jessie realizes where she is, she feels all these old emotions rising to the surface, and at the end we find that Emily left a time capsule and named her daughter Jessie. And oh, what a gut punch that is to know that Emily still always cared and loved Jessie, even if she did grow old. It's what this film really cements this idea of you're always going to have a part of our lives that even though they've grown old of you, they'll never forget you. And that's something I really find loving with this film, is that that's the central theme of this film. And we're going to chat about this in a minute, but I really think that Joan Cusack did an incredible choice with this film and had a real good fun in doing so many different emotions for this character and going back to the kind of emotional depth that Jessie had within the first time we met her in Toy Story 2 and getting to really delve back into it. And she is the main character of this film. She is our protagonist, and you get this real wonderful complex relationship between her and Lilypad that I think was a really well done touch, that we're not villainizing the technology as much. So well done Disney for that, and well Pixar, well Andrew Stanton as well. And it's just so many gut punches within this film. It's just so well done. Like I sit here and go, I like this bit, but I'm just like, all of it was just so well done. And I think the only thing I was like going into this film when trailers were out was, what is the buzz? These are the buzzards gonna play a role in, other than just being a subplot? What? How? Especially from what the story we're getting told of, and the way that they work them in is so well done. Hats off to them, and there are so many little Easter eggs and cameos when they're flying over, like Lotso, Pizza Planet, Al's Toy Barn. There's a Danico oil station, which I was like, oh my god, that's cool. And the Flying with Style reference got me crying about 10 times during that sequence. It's literally, when I went to see the film with my mom, it was literally laughing at 1 minute, crying the next, laughing at. It's a real wide range of emotions. It's an emotional roller coaster, this film. Because 1 minute you laughing at jokes that Woody Buzz are going, and then you're crying because Jessie's done realize that where she is, and it's so well crafted. And Woody and Buzz are really well done in this film. They don't feel like they're overstepping, and I kind of glad that they don't take too much of a backseat, but they're not like the main focus, which is kind of nice for once that we get a bit of a unique perspective within. It was nice that we got to see Bo Peep and Annie Potts came back. Honestly didn't expect either her or Jake Kaboom voice actors to come back. I thought it'd be just more of a non-speaking cameo. I do wish we got to know where Wheezy was. Was one of my one things. I was like, where is Wheezy? But hey, maybe Toy Story 6 if it happens. Do I need that? No. Because Toy Story 5 was such a well done film. And I'm going to say this now. This should have been Toy Story 4. Toy Story 5 was the perfect epilogue type film to dive into a character that fans love and adore, as well as from the original films, and kind of work out where she is now and the kind of things. But bringing in this modern technology aspect against a toy who's dealt with so much emotional and abandonment issues was just such a well done and thought out way of dealing with these themes of now. And this film is so relevant. We're seeing it now where kids are addicted to screens and they're not as much playing with toys in the era that say I would have done and grown up with. Even though we did still have phones, they weren't like everywhere, and it wasn't like completely. And I adored playing with my toys as a kid. I kind of really hope this film has brought back some of that for a lot of young kids. And that's where I'm gonna. It's just Toy Story 5 is just a well done film, and I hope that they're all proud of how well it's done. And I kind of would not be surprised if we get another one just on the back of this. As long as it's done right, with the right story and the right ideas of what they want to do with it, then do it. If it's just a cash grab, I don't want to see it. Which is why I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with The Incredibles 3 and Monsters Inc. 2, which is going to be really interesting, even though I don't think we need Monsters Inc. 2, because we had Monsters at Work that was already so well done. So that's where I'm going to wrap this week's podcast up. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at StraightOntoDisneyPod, and you can email me your thoughts at StraightOntoDisneyPod@gmail.com. Like and subscribe as always. Drop in the comments what are your thoughts on Toy Story 5 as a film. Did you love it? Was it not your thing? Do you think they should have just stopped? I know a lot of people do think that. And to be fair, I do agree to a certain extent. So as always, follow along on Spotify as well. Or if you want to just listen to the podcast, you don't need to have to watch me all the time. Although it's fun. like and subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and bye!